Nikki, put aside your notes and listen to what I found out. Nikki, this is something. Imagine, the girls went to a fortune teller, and she's amazing at it. She can tell your whole life story. Let's go see her. I really want to know what the future holds for me. I don't believe in fortune telling, Ronnie. People like you go, get fooled, and this fortune teller will take a lot of money from you. Nikki laughed at her friend. They exploit trusting people like you. Well, I don't know, replied Nikki's friend. Many who went to her for predictions have seen things come true. For example, Natalie Jo is getting married, and the fortune teller told her the exact year, month, and even the day she would get married. Natalie just had that idea in her head, and she pursued it. That's all. And the date. How could Natalie guess the date? She didn't know when they would decide to get married. Well, she had a rough idea, Nikki replied, but not the exact date. Ronnie said, Nikki, I just want to peek into my future a little. What if I can prevent something bad in my destiny? Come on, let's go. I'm not going. Why should I give money to some woman who just makes up predictions? I'm sure everything will be fine for us. If you set your mind to it, dream about it, and walk towards it, it will happen. We'll finish college, become doctors. That's great, Ronnie. We'll heal people, maybe even save lives. That's for work. I want to know about personal things, Ronnie said. And in our personal things, we'll be better off than anyone else. Nikki laughed. But what if we're not? They say you can ask the fortune teller questions, and she answers them. I wanted to know about Tyler. Is he my destiny? Or, I'm afraid of getting involved in something. Tyler insists on intimacy, says we'll finish college, get married. But what if we don't? What if we don't get married? Nikki, just for me. Please, let's go. For me, please. And you can't go by yourself. Yes, it's scary alone. If we went together, maybe you'd change your mind, reconsider, and want to try it too. Okay, let's go. But not today or tomorrow. Why? Ronnie asked disappointedly. Easter holidays haven't ended yet. They say fortune telling is a sin, and I don't want to sin. Since when did you become so religious? I never noticed that about you. Religion is the opium of the people. Like my father used to say, he's not particularly religious either. But he once told me, we didn't establish all this, and it's not for us to repeal it. Understand? Repeal what? Ronnie asked. God. So many people believe in him, so there must be something to it. That's just my opinion. Well, okay, we'll go when you say so. I won't go alone anyway. On the appointed day, they went to the fortune teller. She lived in an ordinary apartment building. She's a strange fortune teller. Doesn't look like one at all, Nikki thought. There were no magical balls in her house, no candles, no amulets, and no herbs hanging around, no typical fortune teller attributes. The woman herself didn't look like a mage either. She was in a casual floral housecoat, hair pulled back with a headband, and she greeted them with an ordinary smile. Nothing demonic or supernatural about it. Come to learn about your fate. Girls, aren't you afraid? The fortune teller asked with a smirk. Why should we be afraid? Nikki smiled skeptically. Fate might not bring you joy. It's one thing to live without knowing what will happen to you, and another to know everything in advance and worry about it. But if knowing can prevent something bad, as you say, why not? Nikki replied. That's the thing. You can't. I see you don't believe in predicting destinies. I don't, Nikki answered. Then why did you come? My friend asked me. She wants to know her fate. She thinks that if she learns something important and unpleasant, she can prevent it. But if, as you say, she can't, why bother knowing her fate? Knowing or not is everyone's right. You can prevent small things, but global events are inevitable. The fortune teller replied. What do you mean by global? Ronnie asked. Events that can change your life and turn it upside down. The date of your birth and death, The birth and death dates of your loved ones. That's what I'm talking about. What's your name? The fortune teller asked Ronnie. Ronnie, so, Ronnie, are you ready to hear your fate? Or have you changed your mind? No, I haven't changed my mind. That's why I came to you, Ronnie replied. Then I ask for silence. Nothing else. Just silence. The fortune teller looked at Ronnie's palm lines for a long time, then folded the girl's hands palm to palm and held them in her own hands. Looking at all this, Nikki couldn't help but smile skeptically. But the fraud, as Nikki considered her, didn't look at Ronnie or Nikki. She was in a trance, as if she was in some other dimension. Her gaze was otherworldly and even eerie. Nikki closely watched Ronnie and the fortune teller. Ronnie seemed strange to Nikki. The Ronnie she knew was behaving oddly. With closed eyes, she moved her lips as if whispering something. But the whisper was inaudible. And then she swayed from side to side. And the longer the session lasted, the stronger she swayed. At some point, Nikki thought Ronnie might fall off the chair. Then Ronnie's swaying began to slow down, and finally, it stopped. The fortune teller released Ronnie's hands, and she opened her eyes. Everything okay? The fortune teller asked. My head is spinning a bit, Ronnie replied. It's nothing. It will pass. Well, Ronnie, you're a good person, and everything in your life will be based on your merits. You will save people, and they will be grateful to you. Wherever you go and whomever you talk to, you will command respect and love. I saw 2 children for you, a son and a daughter. Your children will follow in your footsteps. Be as kind and open, and everything will be good for them. You will live a long and happy life, and you will write a book. The fortune teller said. Oh, I'll write a book. Ronnie laughed. Yes, you will, and newspapers will write about you. You'll be happy, just like that. And now, ask your questions. I'm currently dating a guy. I wanted to know if I'll marry him. No, you won't. Keep dating, gain life experience, but don't get into serious relationships with him. He's not the right person for you. He will betray you, but don't be upset and don't close yourself off from the world. Your person will come later. No one will believe in your marriage anymore, and you yourself won't believe in it. But don't rush to marry the first one who comes along. Wait for the one destined for you. How will I know it's him? Ronnie asked. Don't worry, you'll know. You'll just feel that it's him. Can I warn myself? Ronnie smiled. You can if you don't marry someone who isn't meant for you. Otherwise, there will be many disappointments and distrust in your life, and you may not believe in your true love, and then your life can take a different turn. Well, that's about it, the fortune teller said. And when will I die? Or you don't see that? Ronnie asked. I see everything, but I don't tell people death dates. They don't need to know that. Thank you. Ronnie smiled and put money on the table. The fortune teller quickly grabbed the bills from the table, opened a drawer, and tossed the money in there. All done swiftly, as if afraid someone would take them from her. Nikki couldn't hold back and expressed her opinion. All you said, Ronnie, was just general phrases. Helping people. You'll be happy. 2 children. Where are the supporting facts for your predictions? Nikki doubted. Nowhere. Life will show that I am right, replied the fortune teller. It's some kind of nonsense. If this is how you do fortune telling, I can do the same without confirmation, without proof. I'll come up with all sorts of nonsense. Take money and profit from trusting people like Ronnie. Nikki smirked. What if I predict for you? I won't take money, and later you'll live your life. Remember me because everything I say will come true. The fortune teller suggested. Agree, Nikki. She won't take your money. It's interesting, isn't it? Just agree. Even if you don't believe in it, it's still interesting. Ronnie supported the fortune teller. The fortune teller stared at Nikki attentively, without blinking. Nikki wanted to refuse, but apparently, the fortune teller somehow possessed a kind of hypnosis. because Nikki went to the table where the money had just lain. S80 on the chair Ronnie had just vacated, and extended her hands to the fortune teller. Now Ronnie observed her friend and the fortune teller. The fortune teller opened and closed her eyes. Horror appeared on her face, while Nikki swayed from side to side and often screamed, frightening Ronnie. However, Nikki's body swaying slowed down. She opened her eyes, and Ronnie saw tears rolling down her friend's cheeks. "How do you feel?" the fortune teller asked Nikki. "I felt like I wasn't there all this time, nowhere, as if I had died. Now my head hurts a lot, and I'm thirsty." The fortune teller brought Nikki a glass of water and said, "I don't know if you need to know about your fate. It's a very complicated fate. Very. I have never met people with such destinies. I became afraid for you. Are you saying this on purpose? Don't want to talk because it's your exposure, the collapse of your business." Nikki smiled. "I'm ready to say everything or selectively, so that it's not so scary for you to live with this." The fortune teller suddenly smiled and shook her head. "Say everything. You won't scare me with anything. A person is his own god and devil. He builds his life the way he wants." "Well, then, listen, Nikki, maybe it's not necessary. I'm scared. You even screamed when you were in a trance," Ronnie asked, frightened. "What? Ronnie, do you want to scare me? Me, the future doctor? Don't make me laugh. Scary stories won't scare me. Speak up." She addressed the fortune teller. "I don't know why you have such a complicated fate. Maybe it's because of the sins of your parents. But I haven't looked into their fate, so I can't judge that. My parents are good, kind. They help people, cure them. It's just that my dad is very sick now." "Are you talking about those you're living with now? And does a person have 3 sets of parents?" Nikki laughed. "No, only one pair. And they are not the people who raised you." Ronnie's eyes widened, and Nikki laughed, saying, "This confirms that you're talking nonsense." "All right, Ronnie. I don't want to waste time listening to this nonsense. Let's go." Nikki got up to leave, but the fortune teller's words stopped her. Before the fortune telling, "I couldn't have known. You were raised by your grandmother until the age of 7, and she is not your biological grandmother. Your parents lived far away from you because your adoptive father, after serving time in prison, was on parole, and your adoptive mother was with him, not wanting to leave him alone. You are their only child. They have no other children. They are much older than the parents of your peers, and your adoptive mother lived through the war. Do you want to hear more?" Ronnie seemed to be stunned by the fortune teller's words, sitting as if in a stupor. "Well, surprise me further." Nikki S80 backed down and stared at the fortune teller. "Then listen and don't interrupt. Later, you can ask what's unclear. Your real relatives will reveal themselves later, and for mercenary reasons. You will be a doctor, just like your friend Ronnie. Only Ronnie will save people, and you will have more lost lives than saved ones. You will burn in hell for your actions, but your hell will begin right here on Earth, during your lifetime. You will also have 2 children, a daughter and a son. The daughter will be older, the son younger. You will love your son very much, more than anyone else in the world. He will be the light of your life, but your love will lead to no good. Higher powers will know that you value your son more than anyone else. So, as punishment for your sins, they will take him away from you. Don't expect happiness. You won't have it. For a while, you will be happy. But after the death of your son, your happiness will evaporate. Your daughter will also be unhappy, unloved by you and your husband, all because you will continue to love your deceased son more than your living daughter. You will have 2 marriages. After the death of your son, you and your husband won't be able to live together. You will blame each other for the death of your son. That's it. What a tragicomedy. I don't believe it. Some nonsense. I'll be happy despite it all." Nikki smiled, "But as proof of a truthful prediction, I mentioned events that have already happened in your life, And I'm sure you agreed with them. You just made it all up to spite me because I didn't believe you. That's the whole truth. And what about death? When will I die? Nikki skeptically smiled. Why do you need to know that? Birth and death are mysteries. One shouldn't intrude into them. Birth and death are God's will, and a person shouldn't peek into them. But I want to know. Speak, or I'll assume you are just boasting that you possess this knowledge. You will die on the 6th of June. I didn't want to say the year, but then I thought you would wait for your death every year. But I'll tell you, it will happen on the 6th of June. In the year 2024, I won't live such a short life, judging by your predictions. And I'll try to trick death. I think when you know the exact date of its arrival, it's possible. No one has deceived death yet. It will come when fate has decreed. If you live until that time, I'll come to you and tell you how I fooled it. Nikki laughed. You're young and foolish. Well, life will teach you. The fortune teller replied. For some time, the friends walked in silence. But Ronnie's curiosity got the better of her. You'll ask Mrs. Wood if you're her real child or not. Ronnie asked. What? Of course not. Why would I offend my parents with some fortune teller's predictions? I won't even think about it. But what if it's true? After all, the fact that your grandmother raised you, and that Mrs. Wood fought, and that your father served time, those are all true. So, the idea that your parents are adoptive could be true as well. It can't be. Almost the entire country fought, and half the country served time. These are just the fortune teller's assumptions. Close this topic. Understand? Nikki replied. Fine. Let's close it. Understood. Ronnie said, offended. Ronnie decided to find out everything from her mother. A mother must know about such things because she and Mrs. Wood are friends and have known each other practically since childhood. Mom, are Nikki's parents adoptive? Is Mrs. Wood not Nikki's biological mother? Carol flinched and turned towards the window. Mom, can't you hear what I'm telling you? What are you saying? I got lost in thought, so I didn't hear you. But Ronnie didn't believe her mother. She saw how she twitched when she heard the question. I asked if Nikki's parents are not her real parents. Where did you get that idea? They are her real parents. The closest ones. Where did you hear such gossip? It's not gossip. It's what Nikki's fortune teller predicted. Why did you go to a fortune teller? Don't you have anything better to do? You should go to parties instead of fortune tellers. If I find out that you went there, I'll punish you. No more visits to fortune tellers. Understand? Yes. I understand. I understand. Enough of talking nonsense. Get ready to go to the store for milk and bread. And don't forget the cookies. I got it. Ronnie sighed and went out. She thought, no, Mom definitely knows something about the Wood family. How strangely she reacted, even flinched, when I asked about Nikki's parents. Wait, Ronnie. What's going on? Don't cry. Talk to me. Tell me what happened. Nikki embraced her friend. Ronnie sobbed, trying to interrupt her tears and answer Nikki. But she couldn't manage. Her breath caught, and she couldn't say anything. Did something happen at home? Nikki asked. Ronnie shook her head. Here, have some water. Nikki offered her a cup. Ronnie took 2 sips of water and said, Tyler proposed, bursting into tears again. Well, that's wonderful. Why are you crying? Nikki smiled. He didn't propose to me. Imagine that. Not to me. He dated me for 4 years and decided to marry someone else. That can't be true. These must be rumors. We should ask Tyler, Nikki said, surprised. He told me himself. He's marrying Ruth. Unbelievable. I didn't expect this from Tyler. Is it a joke? Maybe he was kidding. Nikki wondered. What's there to joke about? Ruth is 2 months pregnant. That's what he said. Really? And nobody noticed anything about them. When did they have time? I asked him the same thing. And you know what he said? No details. Nikki, he spoke to me so cruelly. He said it's my fault that Ruth is pregnant because I didn't agree to be intimate with him. And he's a man who needs sex. Ronnie cried, murmuring through tears. So the fortune teller's words are coming true. My Tyler is not mine at all. Ruth took him away. What does the fortune teller have to do with it? He's just a scoundrel. It's a good thing you didn't marry him. He would have cheated on you. Don't cry, Ronnie. It's unclear who is luckier, you or Ruth. I think it's you. So calm down and live on. Let Tyler and Ruth burst with envy, Nikki replied. On the bustling train station platform, Nikki bid farewell to Ronnie. Ronnie hugged her friend, and for a while, they stood in silence. Nikki seemed to feel a sense of guilt toward her friend, as she would stay in their hometown while Ronnie was leaving to work on a contract in another city. Nikki's mother, a war veteran and a distinguished doctor with connections, had arranged for Nikki to stay in the city after graduating from college. Nikki would be working at the maternity ward, helping women become mothers. The fortune teller was wrong. Nikki was a facilitator of new lives, participating in the mystery of childbirth. How will I manage without you, Nikki? 3 whole years without you. But I'll come back home. I'll definitely come back after fulfilling my contract, Ronnie said. Of course, you'll come back. This is our city, and you'll return. In the meantime, you'll come here for vacations, and I'll visit you, Nikki reassured her. Of course, I will. Imagine, Nikki, I'm going to a foreign city, where there are strangers. It scares me, Nikki. I thought Tyler and I would get married, move away together, and he would support me. But it didn't work out. Don't dwell on the negatives. Think about the new phase of your life. New people, an exciting job, and new experiences, Nikki advised. You know how to support me. When you say that, I'm almost not scared anymore. I love you, Nikki. Ronnie smiled. And I love you too. Nikki met Jack at a medical conference, and their relationship quickly developed. They had a lot in common, and Jack, skilled in courting women, captured Nikki's heart. 6 months into their relationship, they got married, appearing to be the happiest couple in the world. At least that's how Nikki and Jack thought. They had no doubts about having a child. A cherished, love-born child is a miracle. Jack was thrilled about Nikki's pregnancy and eagerly awaited the arrival of their son. But what if it's a daughter? Will you love her less? Nikki asked her husband. Nikki, what are you saying? I'm sure it's a son. Don't even doubt it. He will be my heir. We have a generation of surgeons, and my son will be a surgeon too, Jack insisted. Nikki desperately wanted to please her husband and have a son, but she gave birth to a daughter. Fate seemed to mock them. Jack hid his disappointment, but Nikki knew he didn't get what he expected, and she was also upset about having a daughter. On Jack's insistence, they named the baby Melanie after his mother, despite Nikki's dislike for her mother-in-law. From the beginning, Jack's mother disapproved of Nikki, envisioning a different wife for her son, someone more focused on homemaking than a career. Nikki, being the opposite of her mother-in-law's expectations, endured her constant moralizing. Initially, Nikki brushed it off, but the constant criticism started to hurt, especially when Nikki became pregnant. When Nikki complained, Jack just laughed it off. Accept my mother for who she is. She won't change. You think I don't get these lectures? I do. Sometimes, when I ignore or oppose her advice, she throws a couple of curses my way. Be thankful those curses aren't directed at you, Jack explained. Thanks, Nikki said, and the conversation ended there. Little Melanie was already at fault for being born a girl, and, to add insult to injury, she bore the name of her despised grandmother. Moreover, the girl even resembled her grandmother in appearance. Nikki didn't feel the overwhelming love that mothers usually feel for their firstborns. There was no all-encompassing affection for Melanie. Perhaps the little girl sensed the lack of love, as she was restless and cried a lot. This made Nikki exhausted and sometimes angry with the child. When things became overwhelming, Nikki would call her mother-in-law for help. Nikki didn't want to see her detested mother-in-law, but she knew that Mrs. Red adored her granddaughter, so she would rush over at the first call. The grandmother would take little Melanie in her arms, cuddle her, and smile as if she had given birth to her. She would say, "My girl, my little one, no one loves you like I do. You're my precious, my little beauty." Little Melanie would fall silent, as if listening to her grandmother and understanding her words. This infuriated Nikki and intensified her hatred for her mother-in-law. However, Nikki acknowledged that her mother-in-law did stay with the child as long as needed for Nikki's recovery. Nikki could finally get some rest, leave the house for errands, and strangely, Melanie behaved quite calmly with her grandmother around, sleeping most of the time. In the meantime, the grandmother watched TV or cooked lunch for Jack, as the daughter-in-law couldn't find time to prepare soup or fried chicken. Jack needed home-cooked meals, not convenience foods. Jack didn't show any love or even interest in the little one. It was as if she wasn't his child. He could take her for a walk, push her stroller, or hold her while Nikki was busy. But there was no enthusiasm for his daughter. He had expected a son, and his expectations weren't met. In this environment, little Melanie grew up with indifferent parents, but with a grandmother who adored her endlessly. Nikki's mother played no part in raising her granddaughter. She was occupied with her career, her ailing husband, and her elderly mother, who had been unwell lately. The old woman's legs had completely stopped functioning. Nikki loved her grandmother, and how could she not? Her grandmother raised her. Nikki's parents were occupied with the demanding work of doctors, especially surgeons, and both morally and physically, their job was extremely challenging. The grandmother, on the other hand, was always at home, always there for Nikki. Even after getting married, Nikki didn't forget her grandmother and often visited her, sometimes alone and sometimes with Melanie. Today, the grandmother called Nikki and asked her to come with the little one. "I don't have much time left in this world. I wanted to see you and Melanie one last time," the grandmother said. She asked to place little Melanie next to her. As the grandmother caressed the baby's head, holding her close, it seemed like she might get up, pick up her great-granddaughter, and stroll around the room. They looked so touching together, and the baby had a soothing effect on the grandmother. "Just as little as you were, Nikki. So alike. A pure angel." The grandmother spoke. Tears rolled down the wrinkled cheeks of the grandmother, dropping onto the baby's face. The baby wrinkled her face, blinking frequently, not understanding where the drops were coming from. "Take her. There's no need for her to wash off my old tears. Let our girl be happy and oblivious to sorrow. Let her not experience the hardships and troubles that we went through with this cursed war. I want everything to be good for you, my dears. And it will be. Everything will be good. But without me, I will die. I feel my time is near. But even from there, I'll help you in any way I can. Just listen to yourself, Nikki. Remember your dreams. I'll send you hints and protect you from any harm." "Oh, Grandma, stop it. Live a bit longer. How can I live without you?" "Live, Grandma. Everyone has their allotted time, and mine is ending. I don't want to leave you, Nikki, with the secret we've all kept from you. I don't know if the secret is a sin or not, but I just want to be free from it, to leave freely. I called you today to see Melanie and you one last time and to open up to you, Nikki." Melanie, as if sensing a serious conversation between her grandmother and mother, fell asleep. The grandmother crossed the slumbering baby, then crossed herself, sighed, and said, "Nikki, you are the dearest to us, to me, to your mom, to your dad. But another woman gave birth to you, not my daughter, someone else." The grandmother clutched her chest, cleared her throat, and continued, "My heart is pounding. It might leap out of my chest. Nikki, give me the pills. I'm afraid I won't have time to tell you everything, but you must know." With trembling hands, Nikki gave her the pills and a glass of water, pouring some for herself and drinking it. There, it seems to be calming down. God willing, I'll have time to tell you everything. Please, my dear, don't tell anyone what I'm about to tell you while I'm alive. I don't want them to curse me while I'm still here, and when I'm gone. Yes, Nikki, you have another birth mother. Well, let me start from the very beginning. As soon as my daughter returned from the front, she enrolled in medical school. She completed nursing courses during the war, accustomed to pain, blood, and mud. She knew she would encounter all of it in her work. She intentionally went to medical school. She dreamed of becoming a surgeon. At the front, she almost equaled the doctors, performing surgeries on the wounded. You might say, a nurse didn't have the right. Yes, my dear, this was war. There was a shortage of doctors and their hands. The life of the wounded depended on immediate surgical help, sometimes counting minutes. They had no choice. After the war, she was practically a surgeon, but without the paperwork. So she went back to study. After graduating from medical school, she was sent to a small town. There was a small hospital, and she worked there as both a doctor and a nurse. A one-woman show. There, in that town, she met your adoptive father. He had been in prison, serving his term, but due to amnesty, he was released early to the same town, with the condition that he would work as a doctor for the prison. The town was small, so your adoptive parents crossed paths at work and ended up living together, later getting married. My daughter couldn't conceive. She was infertile. She and her husband somehow came to terms with it, but fate took a turn. A pregnant woman came to the hospital. Her contractions had already begun. She gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl, and she said she would abandon the girl. She claimed it would be too difficult for her to raise 3 children. It turns out she already had a daughter from her first marriage, and her first husband, a soldier, didn't return from the front. She remarried, but her second husband was soon sentenced to 10 years for fraud. She wrote him a letter, seeking advice on whether to have an abortion or not. He advised her to decide for herself, as he might be in prison for a long time, and it was uncertain if he would return. Many didn't come back, either dying from hard work or other reasons. She decided to give birth, but didn't expect to have twins. Your adoptive mother tried to persuade her not to abandon the girl, but she refused, saying, "I don't need any of your persuasion. I will give up the girl." That's when she decided to adopt you. The doctors even asked her to give up the boy too, to avoid separating siblings, but she flatly refused, wanting to delight her husband with a son. So, Nikki, that's how you came into our lives. Later, your adoptive parents brought you to me, and I raised you until school, after which they moved here. Well, dear, that's all I wanted to tell you. No one knows that you're not our biological child. Everyone thinks my daughter gave birth to you. Nikki took another sip of water to clear the lump that formed in her throat, burst into tears, and said, "Grandma, am I like some abandoned puppy that you picked up? It's hotful." Well, Nikki, haven't we raised you well? You had everything that others didn't have. Dressed up like a doll. Fresh produce, education. Look, you became a doctor. So, there's no reason for you to be upset with us. I'm not talking about you, Grandma. I'm talking about the mother who abandoned me. Is she still alive? I don't know, my dear. Since we took you in, we've heard nothing about your biological mother or your siblings. Grandma, tell me, what did Dad go to jail for? Every time I asked Mom, she dismisses it, saying, "Oh, nothing. He was wrongfully imprisoned." I'll tell you, Nikki, maybe I shouldn't, but since you've started, I'll tell you. He was jailed for desertion. Your mom has nothing to justify him. That's why she avoids the topic. So, Mom is a war hero, and Dad is a deserter. How could Mom forgive him? She went through the entire war herself and married a deserter. Dear, don't judge them too harshly. He's weak, and my daughter is strong. That's how they complement each other. He's never approached her for being infertile. Wasn't he a good father to you? He was a good father. Very kind. Let me tell you, dear, not everyone can take a life, even in war. Your father is one of those. He's a surgeon, called to save lives, not to take them. Remember our agreement, that you know this secret, and you'll tell them only when I'm gone. Why? Why should I tell them? No, Grandma, I won't say anything. Let them think I'm unaware. If they wanted to, they would have told me a long time ago. I don't want to distress them, especially since Dad is unwell. Why give him unnecessary stress? Melanie woke up, stretched, smiled with her toothless mouth, and spoke in her language that only she understood. Oh, you little chatterbox. It's a pity I won't see Melanie grow up. My dear, my little one. Grandma smiled with the same toothless mouth as her great-granddaughter. Grandma passed away, and 8 months later, Nikki's father also died. It was a tough year for Nikki and her mother. 2 deaths in a year were too much. No one to support me, Nikki wrote to Ronnie. Nowhere to share my feelings. My dear friend, it's so hard for me now. Ronnie, can you believe it? The fortune teller was right. My parents are not my biological ones. Grandma confessed before she died, but I haven't told Mom and Dad that I know about their secret. Dad is no more, and I don't want to upset Mom. Jack doesn't know either. Only you and I know, Ronnie. Now I'm scared of the fortune teller's predictions. Another year, a whole year waiting for you. I miss you so much, Nikki. Nikki. Ronnie immediately spotted her on the train platform. She rushed towards her friend and gave her a tight hug. Little Melanie, while her mother was busy hugging Ronnie, giggled and started running. She's so adorable, Nikki. Ronnie exclaimed upon seeing Nikki's daughter. So small, yet she runs like a meteor. We need to keep a close eye on this meteor. Nikki caught up with her daughter and lifted her into her arms. 2.5 years. Melanie is growing, my daughter. Time flies. That's why you traveled to us for so long. Time doesn't wait, Ronnie. Mom is getting older. Dad and Grandma are no longer here, and my Melanie is growing up. That's life, Ronnie. Let's go already. Why isn't Mom here to meet you? Is she at work? No, she's sick. My mom. How I missed her. I'm so glad to see her again. And no, Nikki, I'm not going anywhere, ever. This is my city, our city. I'll work, take care of Mom. Feel sorry for her. She's all I have. Now I only have one mom left too. But you have Melanie. You have Jack. So, you're rich, Nikki. But my personal life didn't work out. Oh, Ronnie, you'll get married someday. Don't think about the worst. Life has its ways. I don't know. But by today's standards, I'm too old for marriage. Many young girls have already surpassed me. You'll get married. Remember what the fortune teller said. You won't believe in your own marriage. And then, suddenly, you'll meet the man of your life. After what I learned from Grandma, I'm starting to believe in that fortune teller's predictions. It scares me. Do you remember what she predicted for me? Do you remember? I remember. Of course. You also said that we would be happy against all odds. Let's be that way. I so want to be happy. We will. Ronnie, you're back. And for me, it's such happiness. It feels like a part of me, that carefree, light, cheerful, and even confident girl, has returned with you. My confidence has diminished. Friend, life has slowly started breaking me. That's what I wanted to tell you. I feel like Jack is cheating on me. Is it a feeling? Or are you sure? For now, it's just a feeling, Nikki said. Let's check him. She looked into Ronnie's eyes attentively. What do you mean? Let's test him. See if he takes the bait or not. Have you lost your mind? What do you mean by takes the bait? Come on. Flirt with him. Throw him some coquettish glances. And then tell me if he took the bait or ignored it. Nikki, if he's cheating, sooner or later, you'll find out. I don't want to be a pawn for Jack. You still call yourself a friend? Nikki was offended. Nikki, it seems to me that you saw me, and that adventurous spirit you had back in our college years was ignited. Nikki, we're not who we used to be. Unfortunately, not the same. Let's live like adults, okay? But if you find out anything about Jack, promise, Ronnie, that you won't keep it from me. Be honest with me, Nikki said. Do you really want to expose him? Why? What for? I don't want to sleep with a man someone else is using. It disgusts me both physically and morally. I don't want to be a fool. Ronnie didn't like Nikki's words at all. Instead of being happy about the reunion and reminiscing about the past, Nikki initiated an unpleasant conversation. Shall we go to my place? Mom will be happy. We'll have some wine to celebrate. Chat like we used to, Ronnie suggested. I can't. Melanie needs to sleep. She can sleep at our place, Ronnie proposed. No. Jack will be upset if I take the child somewhere. Why somewhere? Let's call him. Have him join us. No, Ronnie. Not today. You won't understand, my friend. Married and unmarried women. They are different worlds. Well, I have to go. Nikki hugged Ronnie, picked up Nikki without saying a word, and left. Nikki, bye. Ronnie called after her. Nikki, without stopping, raised her hand as if to acknowledge that she heard and quickened her pace. An unpleasant feeling lingered with Ronnie after the meeting with her friend. She wondered what had happened to them. Why had Nikki changed so much? Or maybe it wasn't Nikki who changed, but Ronnie herself. It seemed like nothing had passed. Just 3.5 years. But Ronnie felt that they had drifted apart. Well, nothing. Now she's here, at home, and she'll try to prevent their friendship with Nikki from falling apart. Such a friendship as theirs is precious. They've been together since the first grade. Once upon a time, Ronnie and Nikki were best friends. Now, during the time Ronnie was away from the city, they drifted apart, but Ronnie didn't want to accept that. She almost called Nikki every day, but Nikki blamed it on a lack of time, so their meeting kept getting postponed. Ronnie immersed herself in work and didn't call her friends so often and persistently. Does married life change a person so much? Ronnie thought. But true friendship, real friendship, is no less important than family. She couldn't find answers to the questions she asked herself. It's disappointing, of course, the way everything is happening. But if a person doesn't come halfway to you, there's nothing you can do about it. Hello, Ronnie. I'm calling to invite you to Jack's birthday. Will you come? It's on Saturday at 6 in the evening at Cave Ball. How are you? Can you make it? Nikki asked. I can. I'll come for sure. And why does your voice sound so sad, Nikki? If you need help, just tell me. We've been together since childhood, and we've never had secrets. I'm just confused, Ronnie. And overall, something in my life is not falling into place. Things at home are strange, and there are troubles at work. I had a falling out with the hospital director. Nikki, we should meet, talk. Maybe together we can resolve the situation. Come to my place today whenever you can. I'll be at home all day. I came from the night shift, and Mom is at work, so I'm waiting for you. I'll come. I'll definitely come. Now spill everything, Ronnie said, pouring wine into glasses. Let's drink to the reunion. Yes, I'd love to. I need not just to drink, but to get drunk, Nikki said. She took a sip of wine, hugged Ronnie, and burst into tears. Come on, Nikki, it'll be okay. You yourself said that we are the architects of our lives, our happiness. Sometimes everyone goes through a rough patch. These troubles come one after another, but everything passes, Nikki. This too shall pass. Just don't stay silent. Don't shut yourself off. We've been together since childhood, through thick and thin. Yeah. I thought I could handle everything on my own. Turns out, I can't. Ronnie, self-confidence doesn't always help. We'll get through it, my friend. Tell me, what happened to you? Pour more wine, Nikki requested. She drank the wine in small sips and gazed thoughtfully into the glass, as if seeking answers to her questions. The truth is in wine, Nikki said. Why do they say that? Maybe because under its influence, a person becomes sincere, revealing hidden corners of their soul. I don't know. Maybe it's true, Ronnie replied. I'll have to quit my job. You know, I have problems with the management. I've been running around looking for work, and what do I find? The only available positions are in small towns. This job is not for me. You know, Ronnie, I work in big hospitals. Listen, Nikki, have you contacted anyone from our circle? Maybe someone can help. What about Ruth? She works in a maternity ward, heading the Department of Pregnancy Pathology. Don't think I'll hold anything against them. Everything is in the past. How are they doing with Tyler? They have a son. I approached her. She offered a position in the abortion department. She assures me that the position won't stay vacant for long and urges me to give her an answer. I don't know. What do you think about it? Ronnie pondered. That's why I asked for advice. I don't know. You don't know. But my husband knows. He was so thrilled that I was offered this position, as if I had given birth to his son, Ronnie. And then my grandmother appeared in my dream, smiling. It felt warm, even in the dream, and my grandmother looked young and pregnant. Can you imagine? Pregnant. I try to perform an abortion on her, but her child screams, resists. He doesn't want to be killed. I still hear his cries in my ears. Horrible. What a terrible dream. Nikki, a dream is a sign. You should definitely refuse this position. If you need my advice, Nikki, it's a no. Even though I'm not a believer, abortion is murder. Nikki took the wine bottle herself and poured into her glass. Will you? She asked. I will. Pour it. So, we've solved one of my problems. My grandmother was dying, and she said she would protect Melanie and me. Send us hints. And here comes a hint in the form of a dream. I remembered the fortune teller again. According to her prediction, this is the place where I will be killing Ronnie. But if I can't avoid it, maybe I shouldn't resist and follow the script. If that's my fate, why resist? Nikki said. Oh, Nikki, maybe a smaller hospital would be better. And what those Mrs. would say about it, that's a definite no. Small hospitals are not for me. And Mom says it's up to me. Doctors are needed there. You know, Ronnie, Jack is really cheating on me. I caught him talking to his lover on the phone, and maybe it's not a lover. Ronnie, everything was obvious. Do I look like a fool? You've never been a fool. And what are you going to do? I don't know. Maybe you have some advice. It's up to you to decide. Ronnie replied. Decide for yourself. Decide for yourself. And that's our advice. I would definitely file for divorce. But you've always been proud, Nikki. So where is your pride? The child is not even 3 years old, and he's already cheating. Maybe my advice doesn't suit you, but I'll say it. Don't work in the abortion department. Divorce Jack. How easy you make it sound. What's next? Time will tell. Why torture yourself, Nikki? Why live against your will, against your conscience? I'm pregnant. Ronnie. Nikki cried. Are you out of your mind? Then why are you drinking wine? Or are you? I haven't decided yet. Waiting for a hint from my grandmother. Oh well. We talked, I drank, and it somehow became easier. I'll go home. I still need to pick up Melanie from daycare. But on Saturday, you come. Nikki smiled through tears. Listen, Nikki, maybe I should talk to Jack. Does he know about your pregnancy? No, he doesn't know yet. Once he finds out, he won't allow an abortion, and maybe the child should be born. Since everything is happening like this, maybe the child is given to you to strengthen your family. So, should I talk to Jack? Go ahead. Jack's birthday was celebrated at the cafe. Quite a few people gathered, and the birthday boy had invited everyone he deemed necessary. He liked having the right people around. Some personalities, however, seemed out of their circle for Ronnie. They gave off an impression of being from the criminal world, dressed in the latest fashion and expensive attire, but there was much about them that didn't exude sophistication, leaving Ronnie surprised. From Nikki's side, only her mother and Ronnie were present, so they stuck together. I'm worried about Nikki. I asked her what's going on, and she said, I'll figure it out myself. Mrs. Wood confessed, so she'll figure it out herself. Mrs. Wood. Don't let her go for an abortion. Ronnie replied, who's listening to us now? Mrs. Wood sighed, you're her mother. Nikki will listen to you. She didn't listen when she married Jack, and she won't listen now. She starts working in the abortion department from Monday. Still going. Ronnie whispered to herself, she's going, and it's a shame. Her father and I saved lives, and now our daughter will be taking them. Meanwhile, the celebration was gaining momentum, and Jack invited Ronnie to dance. Shall we lose ourselves in ecstasy? Just. Jack chuckled. Jack, what kind of jokes are these? Don't joke like that. I don't understand such jokes. Ronnie interrupted. I'm not joking. You're alone, and I feel sorry for you. Pity Nikki. She's your wife, and she knows about your affairs. Your family life is hanging by a thread. My family life is one thing, and affairs are another. One doesn't interfere with the other. Nikki is pregnant, and she's harmed by the stress. She's thinking about abortion due to your turbulent life. What about you? Are you for abortion? What? What if it's a son? No, no abortions. Then calm down. Come back to the family. I haven't left her. I'm just temporarily absent for the good of my own family. I have to blow off steam somewhere. Ronnie realized that the conversation with Jack didn't work out, so when the dance ended, she decided to go home. However, Jack didn't release her hand. Friends, he addressed the guests. Now, the friend of my wife. Ronnie tensed up, and her face turned red. What did he come up with now, dear guests? He raised Ronnie's hand clenched in his own and shouted, the friend of my wife told me that I will become a father again, and I'm sure that this time, it will be a son. Let's drink to my wife. Jack released Ronnie's hand and embraced Nikki. To my beloved wife, and our future son. Hooray! Everyone responded with clinking glasses and a hearty hooray. Nikki's eyes sparkled with happiness, and Ronnie understood that, from her side, it was a setup for her friend. Nothing and no one would change Jack. He would remain the same womanizer. He was so repulsive to Ronnie that she decided to leave immediately. Are you leaving already? She heard behind her. Yes, I'm leaving. Why so early? I'm tired, and I don't like this performance. To be honest, I'm uncomfortable. He too. The man smiled. But I only dared to invite you to dance, and you're already leaving. Maybe we could dance somewhere else. What do you mean? Ronnie became cautious, in a literal sense. I want to invite you to a restaurant where we could talk, and if you don't mind, dance. Oh, I see what you mean. Yes, and what did you think? The man smiled. We're not even acquainted. My name is Andy, and I've already heard about you, Ronnie. Well, let me boast a little since no one introduced me. I'm the head of the surgery department, and Jack is under my command. Andy continued to smile. I wanted to shine in front of you, at least a little. To start with, you succeeded. But as for restaurants, I've had enough for today. Back to work tomorrow. Ronnie laughed. Tomorrow is Sunday. Medics have their own work schedules. You should know that, shouldn't you? You're a medic. Andy was surprised. A surgeon. That's great. We have a lot to talk about. I love talking about my work, and so do I. Ronnie laughed. Then may I work you home? Okay. Since we are both surgeons, Ronnie permitted. For 6 months, Ronnie had been dating Andy. Andy proposed to Ronnie, but she delayed the moment of their wedding. She wanted to get to know Andy better because, for some reason, he had divorced his wife. She didn't dare ask him directly about the reason, and he never mentioned it. What are you thinking? You need to get married. Otherwise, you'll end up an old maid, Nikki exclaimed. Ronnie couldn't tell her friend that, looking at her married life, she wasn't thrilled and was afraid of a marriage like Nikki's. I don't know the reason for Andy's divorce, and I don't have the courage to ask him directly, Ronnie admitted. What's the big deal? Ask. It's entirely reasonable. It's an important aspect. I asked Jack. He says there are all sorts of rumors about Andy's divorce, but they're just rumors. One says one thing, another says something else. And what are they saying? Ronnie asked. They say his wife cheated on him with one of his subordinates. Others say she moved abroad, and Andy didn't want to go there. You better ask him yourself. No secrets, Andy replied to Ronnie. She went to live abroad with a surgeon from our department. That's the whole truth. I didn't want to blacken her name, justify myself. It turns out I'm such a good guy, and she's to blame. If that was the reason holding back our marriage, Ronnie, you should have asked earlier. I just thought you'd be uncomfortable hearing about my failed marriage. I've learned a lot after the divorce. Women need attention, and I was so immersed in work that I couldn't give her the full attention she needed. I justified myself. Just got promoted to head of the department. So much work came at once. There was no time left for my wife, and that led to the divorce. I love you, Ronnie. I promise not to repeat the same mistakes as with my ex. I know how to recognize and correct my mistakes, especially since the work in the department is already streamlined. Well, shall we get married? I do. Jack radiated happiness. Nikki had never seen him this happy, not even on their wedding day. Their son was born, and that said it all. Witnessing her husband's delight, Nikki absorbed such happiness that it seemed there would be no limit to it. Little Jamie brought peace, tranquility, and joy to their family. Nikki, my Nikki, how I love you. I knew you would give birth to a son for me. How much I love you, my dears, Jack said, citing the newborn's need for much time and attention. Jack and Nikki sent Melanie to stay with Jack's mother, Mrs. Reed. Well, has your long-awaited son pushed Melanie out of the house? Nikki's mother-in-law asked. Nikki remained silent. She knew that sometimes silence was the best response to her mother-in-law. I knew it was coming to this, and I'm even glad that Melanie is with me. In any case, I love her. With Jamie's birth, everyone forgot about Melanie. But she's a child, and she needs love. Why are you telling me all this? Why not to Jack? Nikki asked. Jack is a man, and you are a mother, a woman. Much depends on you and the family. Where is your maternal love? I love Melanie. It's just challenging with two little kids. If it's hard for you to help us, don't help. I'll ask my mom, Nikki replied. Has your mom helped a lot? I don't trust her with Melanie. I'll raise her myself. Melanie didn't understand what her mom and grandma were shouting about. She huddled in the corner of her crib, watching their adults with fear. Pack your things, Melanie. Enough scaring the child. Melanie, come here, dear. It's time for us to go. While Jack didn't show paternal feelings towards little Melanie, he now hurried home to his son and didn't let him out of his hands. My son, Jamie, finally, a boy. It was all women in the family. Jack's relationships with his mistresses had temporarily ceased, and Nikki, finally, was happy. She gave her husband what he expected from her. Because of the endless happiness that little Jamie brought her, Nikki loved her son so much that sometimes she reproached herself for not having such unconditional love for her daughter. No, she loves Melanie, of course, but not like Jamie. Her son is the son without which she cannot live. Jamie was pampered by both his mother and father, which caused disapproval from the mother-in-law. Do you even remember that you have a daughter? Mrs. Reed reproached both her son and daughter-in-law. By that time, Melanie was living with her parents. She's treated like a servant here. Melanie, do this. Melanie, do that. Mom, stop trying to turn Melanie against us. Why are you getting upset with us? We have a normal family, and we don't mistreat Melanie. Jack would say, yes, you don't mistreat her, but you don't love her either. These disputes could go on endlessly. Jack couldn't stand it and escorted his mother home. Mom, let me work you home. I'm tired of your nitpicking about our family. Enough. You're turning Melanie against us and against Jamie too. Enough. Jack said, enough. When you start treating my girl with love. However, when Melanie was left alone with her grandmother, Mrs. Reed didn't hesitate to express unpleasant words about Melanie's mother. And where did Jack find your mother? Some frump. Dresses poorly. Silly manners. A commoner. So what if she's a doctor? Commoners know how to run a household at least. But she's absolutely useless. Grandma, stop talking about mom like that. I love my mom, and I don't want you to speak ill of her. Melanie, growing up, would say, and does she love you? She only cares about Jamie. Jamie wants to go to music school. And he does. Jamie wants a puppy. Jamie wants to go to the pool. He gets everything. And do they ask you what you want? Do you speak up? No, you don't. If I hadn't insisted that you go to music school, you wouldn't have gone. I don't care. You shouldn't talk about mom like that. It upsets me. I won't come to visit you anymore because all I hear is how bad my mom is. Yes, Melanie has grown up. I should stop insulting Nikki. Otherwise, Melanie will indeed stop coming to me. Mrs. Reed thought, time doesn't run. It flies. Now Ronnie has 2 children, a son and a daughter, and she lives happily with Andy, just as the fortune teller predicted. While Ronnie's life was going well, Nikki faced challenges. She continued working in the abortion department, and Jack, who had made her happy for a while, began to betray her again. Moreover, Nikki noticed that her husband was involved in criminal circles. Nikki had always noticed people around Jack who didn't belong to their social circle. She tried to find out from her husband how he was connected to these suspicious individuals. Jack brushed off his wife, saying, "It's none of your business, Nikki. Don't get involved. These are important people, and you never know how things will turn out. Connections like these are necessary everywhere. These are influential people." Bald guys would often come for Jack. He would take a bag with surgical instruments, and they would take him somewhere for a while. Jack didn't involve Nikki in his affairs, but she understood that he was taken for a criminal operation. Someone was shot or attacked, and he went to save them. "Jack, stop these operations," Nikki pleaded. "You're exposing our family to danger. You can expect anything from the freaks you're dealing with. As long as they need me, nothing threatens us, and they will always need me. So calm down. Besides, Nikki, they pay good money for my work, unlike the measly pennies you and I earn. Moreover, you get decent sums for those illicit abortions, and I don't want to feel inferior to you. A man should earn more than a woman, and that's what I'm doing. I have bad dreams." Jack, Grandma appeared in my dream, asking to protect the children, especially Jamie. "Nikki, why are you acting like an old woman, believing in dreams? You're a medic, Nikki. What dreams? It's all nonsense. I'm afraid." "Jack, every time someone knocks on our door, I start trembling." "Don't be afraid. Look." Jack pulled out a small box. It's next generation technology, called a pager. "Now, they won't come to us. They'll send a message to this pager about where and when I should come." "Hello, Mom. I see your message on the answering machine. I'm sorry I don't call often. Work has been keeping me busy. Melanie has exams." "No worries, Nikki. I understand. I need to talk to you, not over the phone." "Is it something urgent?" Nikki asked with concern. "Probably. Yes, urgent. I want to confess, Nikki. A terrible sin is on me. I wanted to keep it from everyone, but I couldn't. Nikki, I'm guilty before you. Forgive me, my daughter. I should have told you about everything earlier." Mrs. Wood's hands and voice were shaking. "Oh God. What happened?" Nikki asked in fear. How do I gather the courage to tell you? Wait, Mom. If it's about not being my biological mother, I already know. You know. You know and didn't tell me. How do you know? Did Lainey find you after all? Mrs. Wood was surprised. No, I don't know any Lainey. But my grandmother told me about who I am and how I ended up with you before she died. And you didn't even hint to me. Why? Mom, I consider you and Dad my real parents. And the one who abandoned me is not worth talking about. If I had known that you knew, I would have given Lainey your address. Maybe he would still be alive. Who is Lainey? He's your brother. He came to me, wanted to see you, thought you could help him. I told him you lived in another city, and I didn't know your address, that we didn't communicate. He hanged himself. A terrible sin on me. Oh my God. Why? Nikki asked. Lisa, your supposed sister, sent him a letter. Here it is. Everything is written there. Mrs. Wood pointed to the blue envelope lying on the table. With trembling hands, she poured water into a glass and drank it. I'm to blame for his death, daughter. But how could I have known this would happen? Mom, don't blame yourself. You were protecting your family. Besides, I don't even know if I wanted this connection. And I don't know if I could have helped him. He came for money. He needed a large sum. He owed money, and they threatened to harm his family. He borrowed money for a business, but it didn't work out, and the debt had to be repaid. That's how it happened, Nikki. That's how he took his own life. Mom, I don't have crazy money either to help him. Jack has it, but he would never give it to him. He never lends money, and just giving it away is something he would never do. So don't blame yourself. No one remembered me in all the time I lived with you, and they only remembered when they needed money. I didn't know about them, but apparently they knew about me and didn't need me. Only my money. Perhaps out of desperation, Lainey decided to reach out to you. Didn't know what to do. Mrs. Wood sighed. Fine, out of desperation. But this Lisa, my so-called sister, why did she write this letter? To make us feel guilty. Mom, calm down. We're not guilty of anything. They have their own life, and we have ours, and our lives don't intersect. That's it. That's it. Nikki hugged her mother, and she started crying. And you, my dear, have a cry. Tension will be released. Now I'll give you some sedatives. We'll drink tea together, and everything will be fine. Nikki smiled. And the dearest person to me is you, and I don't need anyone else. Thank you, daughter. Thank you for not pushing me away. Mrs. Wood smiled through tears. Oh, Mom, why would I push you away? Thank you for taking me in. Otherwise, I would have ended up in an orphanage. I'm very grateful to you and Dad for everything. For every moment of my life spent with you. Relatives have shown up, just as the fortune teller predicted. All her predictions are gradually coming true. Nikki is scared for herself, her family, and Jamie. No, something needs to change in her life. Something to interrupt the events that are chasing Nikki. She is so afraid for Jamie because, as the fortune teller said, she will lose him. Why did you decide to quit? Where will you go? Jack asked discontentedly. Jack, I can no longer snatch lives from the wombs of women. Can you understand that? Morally, I can't do it anymore. Nikki, don't talk about what the fortune teller predicted. Jack would scoff at her. He already believes that he is always right, and it's better not to mention the fortune teller. If she tells him that they might lose Jamie, he will just get furious. I'm going into teaching. I've been invited to the medical academy. Why are you deciding everything on your own? Jack protested. We're a family. Don't I have a say in this? What family? Nikki suddenly smiled. Where do you see a family? There's me and the kids, and there's you with your eternal mistresses. You know, don't start. Your jealousy scenes take my breath away. I suffocate with you. Maybe we should get divorced, and everyone will breathe freely. Never. Do you hear me? My son will never grow up without a father. Nevertheless, I am going into teaching, whether you like it or not. The main thing is that I like it." Jack cursed loudly, slammed the front door, and stormed out of the house. Nikki felt like leaving the abortion department had broken the chain of predictions, but she still felt uneasy inside. She decided to go to the church, confess her sins, and ask the Lord to forgive her. The priest listened attentively. During the confession, the gentleness on his face disappeared. He looked at Nikki with such anger, unable to conceal his emotions. As soon as she revealed that she had been performing abortions for 15 years, he refused to listen any further. "Enough," the priest sternly said. "You are worse than a murderer. Not only do you have so many killed, deprived of life infants on your conscience, but you also interfered with the Lord's plan, killing God's creation. There is no forgiveness for you. You can never atone for this. I don't know what brought you here. I don't believe in your repentance for such a prolonged sin. You have no blessing from me for the redemption of your sins. Leave." Nikki walked away, crying. She had hoped to find solace in the church, but encountered anger and misunderstanding. The priest had expelled her. Things got even worse for her. Anxiety and nervousness overwhelmed her. She didn't want to bring her fatigue and pain home. She didn't want to scare the children with her condition. And sharing her innermost thoughts with Jack was futile. They hadn't understood each other for a long time. She also didn't want to bother her mom. She had been unwell lately. Although Nikki's voice sounded cheerful, Ronnie immediately sensed that something was wrong with Nikki. Ronnie picked up a strain in Nikki's intonation. "What happened?" "Nothing yet. Can we meet?" "You know, Nikki, if I'm not at work, I'm always ready to meet with you. I'm near your house already, waiting for you. Come up." "No, Ronnie, I'll wait for you here. I don't want to bring my negativity into your home. Let's sit in a cafe, chat." "I'll be right there," Ronnie replied. "Guess what, Ronnie? The priest kicked me out of the church. Said there's no forgiveness for me. You know, Nikki, I don't trust those priests. Stop getting yourself worked up." "But I believe, and I'm scared." "Ronnie, very scared," sighed Nikki. "You were never a coward. It's just nerves, Nikki. You need to relax." "How's Jack?" "Jack is the same, but I don't care about his affairs long ago. I'm scared, Ronnie. You know, scared. Maybe consider a divorce after all. He'll drive you to nervous exhaustion." "That goes without saying. I lied when I said I don't care about my husband's affairs. Let me tell you, friend, there's little joy in it here, but that's not what's killing me." I suggested a divorce, but he refused. "He might not want to, but you can file for divorce, and they'll proceed without his agreement." "I'm afraid of him, Ronnie. He's involved with criminals. He'll take Jamie away from me, and there's nothing I can do about it." "What do you mean? With criminals?" "He works for them. Firearms, stabbings. If there's a message, he grabs a briefcase with tools and leaves. But that doesn't scare me as much. You know what I fear, Ronnie? That prediction the fortune teller made for us. Until recently, I was skeptical, and now I'm scared. Scared for Jamie. Look, everything predicted for you came true: children, happiness, and later marriage. And they even wrote about you in the newspaper. But I haven't written a book yet." Ronnie smiled. "You'll write one. Many things have come true for me too. Not just many things. Everything has come true. And now I live in fear. The fear of losing Jamie. I can't sleep at night. Imagine, my relatives, as the fortune teller said, have also shown up. What else should I expect?" I decided to break the chain of events. Quit the abortion clinic. Went to confess and repent. And they kicked me out. Could Jamie be next? Nikki burst into tears, and people in the cafe started looking at the friends. "Stop it, Nikki. You have to believe that it won't happen, and everything will be fine." Ronnie understood that Nikki was right, that predictions were coming true step by step, and that Jamie was likely to be the next target of fate. Nikki ordered vodka. Are you having some? She asked Ronnie. I need to drink. I'll have some, Ronnie replied. She wanted to support her friend, but she didn't know how. But don't get too carried away with alcohol, she added. It leads to nothing good. Stop it. I never got carried away with it. And now I just need to drink. The friends had 2 shots of vodka each, and Nikki began to calm down. I need to do something, but I don't know what. Ronnie. From the outside, everything is always clearer. Maybe you know what I should do. Panic was evident in Nikki's eyes. But honestly, Ronnie didn't know how to help her. And suddenly a thought came to her. Nikki, you know what? Let's go see that fortune teller, if she's still alive. Maybe she'll advise something. I don't know. Nikki hesitated. The priest said that fortune telling is a sin, and I already have enough sins on my conscience. But I also used to practice fortune telling, and you see, nothing terrible happened to me. You're right. Let's do it, Nikki agreed. Maybe indeed, some ritual is needed to break the chain of events. Encouraged by this decision, Nikki smiled and said, what would I do without you, my friend? And what if it works? We'll visit this fortune teller tomorrow. Hello. The friends greeted the fortune teller. The fortune teller had indeed aged, but she was still recognizable. She put on glasses and carefully looked at the guests. It seems you've been to me before. I have a good memory for faces, said the fortune teller. Yes, we came to you a long time ago when we were still students, replied Ronnie. Nikki remained silent, a certain internal tension gripping her. The fortune teller looked at Nikki, smirked, and said, and is this you? I remember how you didn't believe my words. What about now? Do you believe, now that you're here? I remember predicting a complicated fate for you, but I don't remember the details. A lot of time has passed, and many destinies have passed through me, so I don't remember. Well, shall we predict again? Or did you come for something else? The fortune teller asked. I'm scared. Everything you predicted is coming true step by step. According to the prediction, my son, Jamie, is supposed to leave this life. I want to know if it can be stopped. Change both my fate and my sins, Nikki asked. The fortune teller sighed, looked away. She wanted to reassure the woman, but she knew that nothing would break the chain of fateful decisions. I repent, deeply repent for my life. Okay, I've come to terms with what's happening to me, and I'll continue to accept it. But my son, Nikki said, I can't comfort you in any way. It's in vain that you came to me. I don't write people's destinies. You've come to terms with your fate, and your son's death is also your fate, your trial. The fortune teller said, do something. Every minute, I expect my son's death. How can I live with this? Why does Jamie have such a fate? Nikki cried out in desperation. Everyone has their own destiny, written from birth to death. And no matter what you do, everything will happen as it's meant to happen. The fortune teller replied, curse you and your fortune telling. Nikki shouted and ran out of the fortune teller's house. Nikki, Nikki. Ronnie shouted after her, but Nikki saw and heard nothing. She ran and ran. Running from herself slightly eased the tearing pain in her soul. She sat on a bench, caught her breath, and went home. Entering the yard, she heard the persistent ringing of the phone behind the closed door of her house. Nikki went inside, picked up the receiver. Nikki, are you home? How are you, Nikki? I'll come to you now. Will you open? She heard Ronnie's voice. No need to come. I want to be alone, Nikki replied. Local gangster Spencer Cobrian, nicknamed Cobra, instilled fear and danger in Jack. But Jack enjoyed receiving a substantial sum from Cobra every month, which somewhat reassured him. The last name and nickname suited this man perfectly. The smooth movements of his body, the unwieldy neck, and the gaze, especially the gaze of almost colorless eyes with black unmoving pupils, horrified everyone. When he addressed someone, his eyes pierced with their coldness, and it seemed that any moment he would throw back his cobra hood and attack. His eyes revealed no emotions, but Cobra's move was predictable. He never concealed his intentions about someone. The laconic Cobra warned of his danger with just one word: war. If someone heard this word, consider them dead, and when and how it would happen. Only Cobra and his guys knew. Jack always took care of his hands due to stress, as hand tremors for a surgeon meant the end of his professional activity. However, today he couldn't control their shaking. Today, at 6 in the evening, he had a meeting with Cobra at the Golden Rose restaurant at the time when Jack's pager displayed the message, "Urgent, Bay Street 62. He was in the middle of surgery, so he couldn't drop everything and go to the specified address. He tried to finish the operation as quickly as possible, but his nervous movements hindered his concentration. Well, the surgery is done. I need to leave urgently, very urgently." Jack excused himself from the head of the department. "You have 2 more surgeries planned for today." Andy replied in bewilderment. "It's a matter of life and death, Andy. The surgeries aren't emergencies. I'll stay overtime and perform them. Right now, I need to go." "Fine, go. Tomorrow is a non-operating day, but you're on duty. See you tomorrow then," Jack shouted as he left. When Jack arrived at the specified address, it was too late. On the bed, a young man laid dead from a gunshot wound to the chest. Throughout all the time Jack dealt with crime, it was the first time he couldn't save a person. Back then, he didn't know what it would cost him. But when he heard that the young man was Cobra's son, his blood ran cold. That was then, and today, 9 days after the death of Spencer Cobrian's son, he is summoned to an audience with Cobra at the Golden Rose restaurant. Jack arrived earlier than the appointed time, but bald-headed men were already waiting for him at their entrance. He knew one of them operated on him. To somehow calm down, Jack turned to him. "How are you, Arnold? Are the old wounds not bothering you?" The grim man didn't even look at Jack, and he understood that there would be nothing good from the meeting with Cobra. Spencer Cobrian would not forgive him for his son. Most likely, he would hear the word war from him. Internally, Jack was prepared for this, but hope for mercy still lingered in his soul. But how could one be prepared for Cobra's war? Just the thought of it made Jack shiver, and the nervousness did not subside. Cobra remained silent when, shivering with fear, Jack greeted him. One of his guys pressed his shoulder, indicating that he should sit on a chair. "I express my condolences for your loss, but I couldn't come right away. I was in surgery," Jack began. "Shut up," he heard from Cobra, and met his motionless pupils. "We pay you so much money. You could quit working in hospitals, but you didn't appreciate our contribution to you. Is your son alive?" It seemed to Jack that right after these words, he would see the inflated Cobra hood. He wanted to say something to Spencer, but fear paralyzed him. It seemed like his tongue was swollen, and he couldn't utter a word. "Your son is alive," Cobra said affirmatively. "But you didn't save mine," Spencer said through his teeth. "War. And don't try to hide or send your family somewhere. They will find you everywhere, and then you'll be praying for death." Jack didn't have time to say anything. Cobra nodded slightly in Jack's direction. His guys took the surgeon by their arms and threw him out of the restaurant. To say that Jack was frightened is an understatement. He understood that it was all over. He couldn't hide from Cobra. He knew that he and his family would be under surveillance. He couldn't perform surgeries because he was literally trembling. So he took leave, stayed at home, drank, and awaited retribution from Cobra. But Spencer took his time with sadistic pleasure, seemingly enjoying keeping his victim in suspense because their anticipation of death is worse than death itself. Nikki understood that something was wrong with Jack, but she remained silent. She feared asking about his sudden love for alcohol, afraid to hear what she was running away from. It happened precisely on the day when 40 days had passed since Spencer's son's death. It was an ordinary spring Sunday, and Jack had his plans for the day. His mistress was leaving for a vacation, and he was seeing her off. Melanie was planning to bake a cake, so Jamie went to the store for cake ingredients. Nikki was tending to the garden. After finishing her work, she entered the house, turned on the radio, and went to take a shower. The sound of water drowned out other noises in the house, so when she came out of the bathroom, she saw Jamie lying on his back in the doorway between the kitchen and the hallway. In his hands, he clutched a bag of groceries. Nikki called an ambulance and prepared to help her son. But the last thing she saw was Melanie lying on the floor of the room, with their dog Charlie next to her. And then everything blurred in her eyes, and she saw and heard nothing more. When the ambulance arrived, there was no one to meet it. The doctors fumbled around the locked gate and, after filing a false report, left. Jack put his mistress on the train and returned home. The scene he encountered horrified him. He opened all the windows and doors, continuously performing CPR on Jamie, and called for an ambulance. "Faster, faster, here," to Jamie. Jack shouted at the doctor who entered the house. "Stop it. Enough." The doctor yelled back, glancing at the boy. "He's dead." Nikki and Melanie, in an unconscious state, were loaded into their ambulance and taken away. "Ronnie, Ronnie," Jack shouted into the phone. "All of them, Jamie, Nikki, and Melanie, are in intensive care. There's the police in our house. Suspicion of carbon monoxide poisoning from the heater. Something happened with the ventilation. Ronnie." Jack sobbed. "It's my fault. I'm to blame for everything. I can't make calls. I don't have the strength. Call the 3rd hospital ICU. Find out how they are." What about Jamie? He knew his son was dead but refused to believe it, shutting himself off from the truth for which he was responsible. "Hello. Good day. A family has been admitted to you. Carbon monoxide poisoning," Ronnie said when someone picked up the receiver on the other end. "Please tell me their condition. And why do you assume it's carbon monoxide poisoning?" "They're poisoned by nerve paralytic gas," the on-duty doctor replied. "The boy is dead, and the woman and the girl are unconscious. Do you think we should bury our son?" Jack asked first thing when Nikki regained consciousness. "Check out of here. We need to prepare for the funeral." Nikki listened to him, thinking he had lost his mind. She didn't want to live. Jack was always drunk, and perhaps being intoxicated made it easier for him to bear the loss of their son. But at the same time, he spewed such nonsense. She wished he had never come to see her. "Now nothing holds us together. Jamie is gone, and I want to live alone," Jack said to Nikki. "We haven't buried Jamie yet," Nikki said with numbed lips from sedatives. "We'll bury Jamie, and Melanie and I will leave." At this moment, Nikki was not in the mood for his statements. She hated him and didn't want to see him because Jack blamed Nikki for everything. "You're to blame for Jamie's death. You're a doctor. You were there and couldn't save our son. I hate you," Jack cried. Drunk, drugged with sedatives, Nikki remained silent. She didn't care what he said. She hated him too. After burying their son, Nikki and Melanie moved to live with Nikki's mother. She couldn't stand being with Jack, who was always drunk and blamed her for Jamie's death. After their son's death, she existed but didn't live. It felt like she had been buried along with Jamie, living in her own world, closed off to everyone. "Well, everything the fortune teller told me has come true. All that's left for me is to die, though I'm almost dead already," Nikki told Ronnie after their son's funeral. "Almost dead is not a term, Nikki. You have a long life ahead of you. You have Melanie, your mom. You have to live," Ronnie replied. Ronnie wanted to tell Nikki that the fortune teller predicted a second marriage for her, but she kept quiet. What marriage? Nikki is so lost. She needs to find herself again. Why live? For what? "Ronnie," Nikki cried. "For Melanie. Look at her. She's already a bride, about to get married. There will be grandchildren. Life goes on." Ronnie hugged her. "How can I live? Who will answer me? How? When the most important man in my life is gone. Jamie is gone. What is this? Mrs. Reed began her angry speech as soon as she crossed the threshold of Mrs. Wood's house. "Hello, Grandma." Melanie approached her and kissed her on the cheek. "Wait, dear, wait." Mrs. Reed pushed her granddaughter aside and stared at Nikki with an angry, condemning look. "What kind of wife are you? Left your husband in trouble. Used Jack and left him. And he's drinking. He needs support. He's going through a hard time. You should have helped him get through Jamie's death, and then you could have left." The mother-in-law sat down on a chair and burst into tears. "Why are you so angry, making such accusations?" Mrs. Wood defended her daughter. "Jack himself kicked out them and accused Nikki of our son's death. But this tragedy happened because of him. He got involved with criminals. We don't know what he did to upset them, but the whole family was targeted because of him. It's dangerous for Nikki and Melanie to stay near Jack. They might try to kill them again." "What crime are you talking about?" "They inhaled carbon monoxide. That's the conclusion their investigation gave. Their investigation was bought by the same criminals. They made that conclusion, but the doctors initially stated that we were poisoned with nerve paralytic gas. However, the criminals silenced everyone. People are afraid, so they keep silent about the truth. Jack has been involved in crime for a long time. I just didn't tell you about it. Didn't want to worry you unnecessarily. I asked him to cut ties with them. But who listens to me? You know Jack does everything his way. No one can tell him what to do." Nikki replied to her mother-in-law. "I feel sorry for him," Mrs. Reed cried. "He's my son. Just as you feel sorry for Jamie, I feel sorry for Jack. What will happen now? Will they kill him?" "I don't know," Nikki replied. "They might reach us and Melanie. For these people, there are no barriers." "Nikki, please, go back to Jack. He left the hospital. They asked him to leave. Who needs a drinking surgeon? In prison, his talent is not needed. He's drinking." "Nikki, Melanie, you're already grown up." Grandma addressed her granddaughter. "He's your father. Have some compassion for him." Melanie stayed silent. She felt sorry for both her mom and her grandma. She didn't know whose side to take. "Why are you burdening the girl with such a heavy load?" Mrs. Wood intervened in the conversation. "Jack is an adult man. He chose this kind of life. How will Melanie help him? I say this out of despair. Forgive me," sighed Mrs. Reed. She stood up and headed for the exit. "He's my son," Mrs. Reed said and left the Woods house. "I feel sorry for Grandma," Melanie said, looking out the window at her departing grandmother. "Mom, can I live with her for a while? Support her?" "Of course, Melanie. We're all here together. But she's alone there, and she needs support," Nikki allowed. Each one experienced grief in their own way. Jack sought solace in alcohol. Nikki underwent treatment at the Borderline States Clinic. Mrs. Reed fell ill, and Melanie took care of her. Only Wood remained steadfast. She had seen worse during the war, but she was deeply concerned about Nikki. She feared that her daughter might lose her sanity due to grief, as she had faced such a situation herself. Mrs. Wood didn't succumb to her fears. Thanks to her strong spirit, she kept Nikki afloat. Ronnie, Nikki's friend, was always ready to lend a helping hand. It was she who managed to have Nikki unofficially admitted to the clinic. Nikki resisted being admitted, fearing publicity and the risk of losing her job with the students. However, she felt that she couldn't cope with her son's death on her own. Perhaps Cobra considered that he and Jack were even, so he didn't take any further actions against him or his family. Jack calmed down a bit, but over the next 6 months, alcohol consumed him and didn't let go. Constant alcohol consumption turned the once successful surgeon into a drunkard who couldn't do without a certain dose of vodka. He didn't get excessively drunk, but he was constantly inebriated, gradually deteriorating. He, a once fit and successful man, was turning into an alcoholic. The divorce between Nikki and Jack happened without any emotions. Jack simply didn't show up in court. The court postponed the hearing, and they were divorced on the second attempt. Nikki was grateful to Jack for not engaging in legal conflicts, not contesting their divorce, so all their property was divided equally by the court. They had to sell the house and buy 2 one-bedroom apartments. After the treatment at the clinic, Nikki slowly started to return to a normal state. She stopped crying, visited Jamie's grave less often, and instead prayed for the repose of her son's soul. She asked God for strength to withstand the unbearable pain of losing her son, and prayers and the clinic helped her. It must be said, Mrs. Reed never recovered from the stress of losing her grandson and the terrible truth about her son. She didn't rise from her bed again and died in her granddaughter's arms. Before her death, Mrs. Reed bequeathed her apartment to her granddaughter. "This is my gift to you, Melanie," said the grandmother. "I ask you, at least occasionally, to visit my grave and your unfortunate father. No one is left for him but you. Forgive him, Melanie. He didn't know what he was doing. The devil deceived him with money, and now another devil has taken hold of him. My soul senses that he's in for ruin. Do you promise me, my granddaughter? Do you promise?" "Yes, I promise," Melanie cried. She loved her grandmother, and her grandmother loved and pitied her. Mrs. Reed understood that Melanie hadn't received enough love from her parents. To prevent the girl's heart from growing callous, she tried her best to compensate for parental love. "Do you have a boyfriend?" the grandmother asked. "I want to die knowing that you love and are loved. One cannot live without love. Without love, a person becomes bitter and even falls ill. Look at your parents. See how they live without love." "Yes, I have a boyfriend. We thought you would get better, and we would get married. Bring him to me. I want to see you both. Rejoice, and don't wait." "I won't get up, Melanie. Get married and live together. I will soon die, and the apartment will be yours. Just love each other." With her grandmother's blessing, Melanie got married, and soon after, her grandmother was laid to rest. Drunk Jack didn't want to leave his mother's grave, and Melanie and her husband had to force him into the car and take him home. Melanie promised her grandmother to look after her father, and she keeps her word. "Excuse me, Nikki." Nikki heard behind her and startled at the unexpected voice. "Yes," she replied, turning around. A bald man with glasses was looking at her. His beard and mustache hid his smile, but there was something familiar in his posture and a hint of recognition in his voice. "Nikki, I thought it might be you, and turns out it is." The man embraced her and kissed her on the cheek. "You can't imagine how glad I am. I've been watching, recognizing you and not recognizing you for months. I couldn't muster the courage to approach. What if it wasn't you?" "I'm sorry," Nikki said, feeling a bit lost. "Yeah, time hasn't been kind to us." "Do you recognize me?" "No," Nikki admitted. "Tyler, remember now?" "Oh my God," Nikki exclaimed. "Now I recognize you, but at first, I didn't. Where are your curls? And you weren't a glasses wearing, but clean-shaven guy. And you, Nikki, you were such a giggler. What happened to you, Nikki? I see you all the time in that black scarf, and your eyes seem sad, as if you're about to cry. I live here, in the neighboring building, in my parents' apartment. I buried my son," sighed Nikki. "Almost a year has passed. It's terrifying." "Tyler, burying children. I'm sorry." "I'm sorry," Tyler said. "Well, what can you do? Can't escape from it. Divorced my husband. That's why I'm living here. And why aren't you with Ruth?" "We're different. We divorced. The kids grew up, and I found myself on the sidelines of life." "How come?" "You know, Nikki, Ruth was always audacious." "I know," Nikki smiled. "She audaciously took you away from Ronnie. We were fools. Whenever I remember, Nikki, what fools we were." "Do you wiser now?" Nikki laughed. "I don't know. It's clearer from the outside. Tyler chuckled. Originally, Ruth and I were not a match. Now she has her clinic. She's passionate about her work. She has connections. She has money. But I don't fit in there. I'm a doctor at the city hospital. I'm a non-profit doctor. Just an ordinary, not modern doctor. Do you understand? I understand. Nikki frowned. Nowadays, there are few like you. My husband tried to become a modern doctor and sacrificed our son. He worked with criminals, and they killed our son. I'm so sorry, Nikki. And how's Ronnie? Ronnie is doing well. She has a good husband, good kids, and a good job. Does that really happen? Really, Tyler? But as you can see, it happens. And in which apartment do you live? 28th, and I'm in the 46th. Drop by whenever you want. We have a lot to talk about. Are you still working as a doctor, Nikki? No, I teach. Why? Tyler was surprised. You have a medical talent. You were always praised. I finished, but I'm running from the consequences, and I can't escape. Well, someday you'll come to visit me. Or is it just talk and that's it? It would be a pity. Will you come in? Yes, I'll come in. Nikki laughed. Nikki, I have a car. If you need a lift, a ride, I'm at your service. Don't be shy, and I won't be shy. Next week marks a year since Jamie's death. Can you take me and my mom to the cemetery? My mom is old, and her legs hurt. Is Mrs. Wood still alive? She's alive but unwell, and mine parents are no longer. Tyler said sadly. Mrs. Wood, I was so delighted to see you. Tyler smiled sincerely. The city is big, and we get lost in it. And suddenly, here we are, living with Nikki in the same house. It's like I've gone back to the time when Nikki and I were students. Do you remember how I loved coming to your place? Grandma baked cookies and generously sprinkled them with powdered sugar. I've never tasted anything better. Mrs. Wood smiled at Tyler's words and said, those were good times. People were simple, living with heart and soul. Tyler, I see you've remained the same. Don't change, Tyler. Don't bow to the idol of money. Be yourself. And here I am, still a fool. The smarter ones make money, and I remain true to my medical duty. That's good. Mrs. Wood smiled. Our country holds on to people like you. Tyler. Mrs. Wood, how can the whole country rely on someone like me? I know what I'm saying. Tyler, exactly on people like you. I saw it in the war. Simple people with faith in their truth prevailed. I'm glad to see you too, Tyler. Mrs. Wood shifted the conversation. Who would take me to my grandson's grave? A taxi driver. Would we have such a heartfelt conversation with him? I'm glad I can help you in such a small matter. Nikki was silent. Grief overwhelmed her. At times, she wasn't even aware of her mother's conversation with Tyler. Her heart was already with Jamie. As they approached the cemetery, Tyler fell silent. He understood Nikki's sorrow and didn't want to disturb her with his chatter. At their son's grave, Nikki cried, embracing her mother. Mrs. Wood, like a true soldier, didn't shed a tear. She frowned, stroked her daughter over the mourning scarf covering her head, and said, cry a little, but just a little. Jamie sees us. I'm sure of it. You know, Nikki, how joyful and bright he was. He won't like that you cry all the time. Tyler stood nearby. He wanted to hug these two women and not let them go until their pain transferred to him. And they calmed down, loving their Jamie without the devastating sorrow, loving him as if he were alive. And he, Tyler, was strong. He could cope. At this moment, it seemed to him that he had no people dearer and closer than these two women. Nikki. Tyler called. Nikki, Mrs. Wood is right. Smile at your son. Let him see that you remember him with joy. Nikki looked at him with a pained look and said, I can't. Not yet. Tyler helped Mrs. Wood out of the car, and when he closed the back door, she looked at him with an entreaty and said, come visit Nikki more often. She needs support. I'm afraid of being intrusive. Tyler admitted. Don't be afraid. Tyler, a man should be persistent. Mrs. Wood smiled and patted him on the shoulder. Thanks for the ride. She winked at Tyler and, leaning on her cane, walked towards her entrance. Hello, my friend, Nikki. I hear you on a positive note. Glad to hear that. Managing well. I'm managing. Thanks to your help and prayers. Stop thanking me all the time. You and I are almost like sisters. I met Tyler. It turns out we live in the same house, Nikki said. Why in the same house? Ronnie wondered. As far as I know, Ruth has almost a mansion outside the city. He's divorced from Ruth. That's life, Ronnie. We thought Tyler would become as mercenary as Ruth. But no, he didn't. Life is like that, Ronnie. Tyler has changed. I didn't recognize him at all, bald, wearing glasses, and a beard. Can you imagine him like that? No. I remember him curly-haired, always with a wide smile, telling his eternal dirty jokes. That Tyler is no more, Ronnie. Just like the old me. He invited me over. Do you want to meet your former love? Why? Nikki, I'm so happy that I'm not concerned about the lives of exes. I'm not talking about that. Meeting A's friends. That's what I mean. Everything that was, I leave in the past. I live here and now. It suits me, Ronnie replied. But sometimes there is but here, there are no buts. Everything always depends on the people themselves. Do you remember, Nikki, how you used to say, we will be happy, despite everyone's happiness? Remember? So, don't do it despite everyone. Do it for your own good and the good of your loved ones. Well, you're surprising me. I didn't expect that from you. Tyler is your ex, Nikki said quietly. He never was mine. If he were, we would be together. I believe in fate. And do you want to go to the fortune teller again? The last time, and you'll find out if your Tyler is the right person or not. After all, she predicted your second marriage. Nikki paused and replied, it's uncomfortable. Back then, I wasn't myself. Cursed her. Now I'm ashamed. But then I was ready to crush and destroy the whole world just so my Jamie would be alive. Do you think you're the first and the last to send her curses? If I were you, I'd go. Do you want to go together? Ronnie said. No, Ronnie. Nama. Tyler often visited Nikki. She regarded him as a friend. But the more he visited, the stronger his attachment to Nikki grew. He couldn't understand why he was drawn to this sad, contemplative Nikki. In the past, when Nikki was a confident, cheerful girl, she irritated him. Maybe because he saw a reflection of himself in her. He was accustomed to saving people. Perhaps he wanted to save Nikki, just like all the people he had operated on. He couldn't explain his feelings for his classmate. He couldn't go a day without seeing Nikki. He started limiting his meetings with Nikki, but it only made him want to be with her even more. He realized he loved her. Yes, he loved her and always wanted to see her every day, always be with her. What way celebrate? Nikki asked, opening the door and seeing Tyler with a bouquet of roses. It's for you. Tyler handed her the bouquet and blushed. Why are you so red? Blood pressure. Nikki joked. No, it's hot outside. And then, Nikki, I'm nervous, he said, walking into the room. Any reasons to be nervous? Nikki asked. Yes, Nikki, I love you. I can't go a day without thinking about you. Tyler exhaled. Wait, Tyler, are you serious? Tyler. Nikki was stunned by such a confession. I'm a grown man, Nikki. Do you know how long I've prepared to tell you this? I was afraid. Afraid you'd push me away. Tyler hugged Nikki and kissed her. Nikki didn't resist Tyler. She was a bit bewildered. He held Nikki in his arms and had no intention of letting her go. Will you chase me away now? I won't leave, Nikki. Not at all, Tyler said, burying his face in her hair. Nikki chuckled softly. Now she saw that cheeky, Self-assured Tyler. He was in his student years. Why are you crying, Nikki? Tyler got scared. He moved away from Nikki and saw that she was laughing and now even giggling. And he also saw in her that forgotten Nikki, the giggling one. Why are you laughing? What's going on, Nikki? Tyler smiled. You're a fool. Tyler, I know, but fools are usually loved, or at least pitied. Fools are forgiven a lot. So forgive me, Nikki, for loving you. You're thrice a fool because I love you too. And you don't see that. Nikki smiled. He hugged Nikki even tighter and said, thank you, my love. Look, am I still red? You're beautiful. Tyler. Nikki looked at him and said, how easy it is with you. I thought love is always painful. I would have thought so if we hadn't met again. Perhaps God sent you to me for my sincere prayers and repentance. I saw you myself and came to you myself. I want to be with you. Tyler smiled, but by God's will, Nikki crossed herself and then crossed Tyler. I liked it when you crossed me, Nikki. Always do that. Okay.